All right, and welcome to WP Dev Table, episode 11. This is the second consecutive week we've had one, so we're on our way. We welcome back Bronson, our world traveler and co-host, to this episode, and we welcome also Jason Cosper to the show, who's the developer advocate for WP Engine. WP Dev Table is a hangout with developers in a loose roundtable-like discussion about tools, best practices, tips, and most importantly, WordPress. So if you like the show, give us some ratings on iTunes. Give us a nice 5-star rating for us. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And if you'd like to get your questions answered by us, you can use the hashtag AskWPDevs on Twitter, and we'll see if we can get that answered for you right on the spot for you. So, like I said, I want to welcome over Jason to the show. If Jason, you want to give a brief intro to yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hey everybody, how's it going? My name is Jason Cosper. I'm the developer advocate over at WP Engine, as Jason said. I basically work a lot with the community, plugin, theme developers, dev shops, things like that at WP Engine, and get to kind of work with them on how to make their products better, but also how we can improve our platform so if they run into any sticking points, things like that. So a lot of people wonder what a dev advocate does, because it's until I got the job title, I didn't even know what it was. We've kind of created it out of whole cloth, but it's definitely been fun, kind of help like shaping the role, and yeah, so it's a lot of fun. It's an interesting job, and it's never really a boring day.
Great. So, I think we've all kind of been traveling around. I know that Bronson's been the world traveler. Tom's been talking at some WordCamps lately. I guess let's just go around the room and see what everybody's been up to lately. Bronson, you want to start?
Cool. Yeah, so I've been absent because I've been traveling in Spain, so I was lucky enough to go to WordCamp Europe with the Human Made team. So we went to WordCamp Europe, which was 3 days, a really fantastic event. It was one of the biggest, well, it was the biggest one they've ever had. I think the last count was 960 attendees, which was huge, so they've nearly cracked the 1,000 attendee mark. The volunteers were fantastic. They probably had about 100 volunteers. The talks were fantastic. Did a few little podcasts on the side with one of the other Human Made gents, and he's put them up on his website. And then after the Human Made, the retreat, we had the WordCamp Europe, we had our Human Made retreat, which is where our whole team gets together and spends about a week together doing hack days and things like that and hanging out. Seeing we're all remote, it's good to hang out with the team. So that's what I've been up to. What about you, Tom?
I just got back from Columbus, Ohio. Did WordCamp Columbus this weekend. Got home at around like midnight last night. So I booked all my travel arrangements and accommodations and stuff super last minute, like 3 or 4 days before going out. So I ended up having to go and connect in Baltimore and then fly from Baltimore to Columbus. So I had like 3 hours of layover each time, and they were about like 1 hour flights each time, so it was more layover than flying time. But that's a bit silly, so I should probably get better about booking flight arrangements and that kind of stuff. And I used an Airbnb that I found kind of last minute too. It looked like it was in pretty good walking distance of everything, but I put the map coordinates in wrong, so it really wasn't. It was about like a half-hour walk the first day to the venue, and about an hour and 10-minute walk the second day to the venue. And it was like 90-something degrees out, so yeah, I perspired a bit. But hey, it was fun. The one thing I've kind of noticed about traveling is that the day after, my body is always in pretty rough shape, mostly just from like sitting around and sitting on the really tiny airplane seats. So like I have this killer headache today just from being squished up and my muscles being
Yeah, I know that feeling. We were on the plane for 40 hours to get to Spain, so that was pretty tough. What about you, Jason Cosper? Have you been traveling around much? Have you been to any WordCamps lately?
The last WordCamp I was at was WordCamp Orange County, and so just about a month and a half ago or so, I spoke there about HHVM and kind of coding and kind of being prepared for that as it comes up, like best practices and things like that. Outside of that, just a little bit of vacation. We also did a whole company get-together for WP Engine. I'm one of the team members who's based out of California, so I flew out to Texas in the nice early Texas summer. It was plenty warm, plenty humid, and I'm in Central California where like 100-degree temperatures are not out of the question. But Austin was up there. I think the humidity is what locked it as being fun. We'll say fun.
Cool. All right. What about you, Jason Resnick? I could always just say the last name, see we've got two Jasons.
Yeah, I haven't done any WordCamps lately, but I just got back maybe a couple of weeks ago, I guess, back from a cruise. So that was really relaxing, and cruise with my wife. We went to the Caribbean, so nice island hopping, sitting on a beach with a.
Sounds tough.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Those umbrella drinks. Hard. So, but that was good. That was a good time, and it was great to come back at least like refreshed. Like I had been really pushing hard for a long time, and it was nice to be able to just get away, push the reset button, and come back hitting strong. So
awesome. Cool. Well, I guess without further ado, we'll get stuck into the show. So the first question we've got for you, Jason, is what's your background before you joined WP Engine?
So before I started working at WP Engine, I worked for a little over 5 years at a tiny web hosting company. You might have heard of them, DreamHost. I'm not sure. They're kind of an indie brand. I'm not 100% sure if many people have heard of them, but anyhow, yeah. So while I was there, I started out as tech support. Eventually, it turned out that I was one of the only people on staff at the time who had really dealt with WordPress when I started working there, and just ended up picking up WordPress, like questions, tickets, things like that, and eventually just through getting sent, like trial under fire, getting sent so many WordPress tickets, questions, things like that. It was like a trial under fire or a baptism under fire, and eventually I became their resident WordPress nerd. And I was a support manager there for a while too, but they had to give me a proper support manager title to make up for the fact that they were just sending me all of their WordPress runoff. But the great thing about that is it helped me build my skill set. It helped me kind of get more prepared. I've been doing blogging stuff, general websites. I built my first website in 1996 when I was at community college. It had an awesome little horizontal rule where a couple droids from Star Wars were chasing each other.
Marquee tag, right?
Yeah, of course. It was pretty rad. But then after a little while, I started this project. I had a personal blog for a little while, then I started this project where I was reviewing T-shirts online for a minute. And it actually, that site pre-shrunk. It's still around. I sold it to help pay for my wedding. But pre-shrunk in 2004 kind of opened up the whole T-shirt review site, like quote-unquote vertical, as douchey marketing speak as that sounds. But yeah, so I kind of originated that whole thing, and then when I realized that I was fighting like 20 other t-shirt sites for like the first review of the new Threadless shirts. I was like, yeah, I'm out of this. Yeah, so I've been playing with blogging software, with WordPress, with just general HTML, coding HTML before CSS was even a thing, for almost 20 years now, and really just kind of took what I learned at everything from, when I first got started to now, DreamHost and everything else to kind of bring me to where I am today.
Awesome. Can you remember what version of WordPress you first started using?
It might have been... It was really early. It was whatever was first installed with... actually, I was a DreamHost customer before I was a DreamHost employee. I got in on like one of their really great sales, and ended up picking up a really super cheap account, and then they were like, oh, we've got this WordPress thing on our one-click installer. You guys should check it out. And at the time, I was looking at either it or Movable Type, and that name might ring a bell for a few people. But so I was looking at it or Movable Type, and Movable Type didn't have a one-click install. So yeah, whatever version came with the DreamHost one-click installer was what I got started with. It might have been 1.5.
Wow. Yeah. Old school. OG.
Yeah. Definitely.
So obviously you see tons and tons of plugins all the time on WP Engine and probably elsewhere too. But of the ones that you see customers using on WP Engine, what do you think are some of the worst ones that are common?
Well, that
aren't blacklisted.
Yeah, the worst ones that we have are, and for folks who aren't aware, WP Engine keeps a disallowed plugins list. It's a list of plugins that either don't work on our platform. It's not that they have bad code. It's say that they're a caching plugin, and of course we handle caching for customers, things like that. Related posts, some things that tend to be not as performant are included on those lists as well. The bane of my existence for a while was related post plugins, mainly because of the way that, just the way that most of them are coded in order to get the proper data for the related posts. Generating that like on every page view, on every like non-cached hit, things like that can end up crippling a server. I really respect and appreciate what the related post people are trying to do, but I feel like there are just a lot of really bad, like it's like everyone's first plugin is forking and doing something funny with Hello Dolly, and everyone's or maybe doing something where you put a different logo up on WP Login. Like, oh, I changed the logo. Check it out. It's really cool. But everyone's second plugin is like a related post plugin, and everyone's like, oh no, the way everyone else is doing these things is garbage. I'm going to do it this way. It's going to be great, and it's not great.
The first WP Engine site I ever inherited, it was back when I was at How About We, which was a dating startup, and there was a popular post plugin that was on their install. And this popular post plugin would do 2 database writes per page view, one to a cache table and one to the normal table. So first you have custom tables, and then you have 2 database writes per page view. So that was obviously non-performant. And it's the wrong data store, right? So going and saving that kind of data to the database schema is just not good any way you slice it. But I ended up having to go and bring that down to like 1 write before, in the process of getting it off onto the proper data store. But yeah, I definitely feel your pain with those kind of plugins.
It just reminded me of a story. My first WP Engine install, I had a client who wanted a randomized post plugin installed there, and we had one there. It was very non-performant, but had a chat with actually Jason Cohen, and he suggested, he and I worked together, and we worked out the best way to do it was to grab 1,000 posts, store them in a transient, and then pull that out. And yeah, Jason helped me do that, which is pretty cool. But yeah, obviously they're the bane of the plugin space for hosting companies, no doubt.
The funny thing that you mentioned there with putting in a transient was as I was trying to optimize the heck out of this plugin to be a bit better until I can move off of it, was that I was storing one of its queries for 12 hours in a transient. But at the time, there happened to be some issue on WP Engine where some legacy code had gotten activated on WP Engine and was causing these transients to delete as soon as they were stored. So this 12-hour cached query was now running on every single page load.
That's better than 2, of course, but still, 1 is not great.
It ended up getting resolved at some point, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel when I started WP Engine, I started in support. I've been in a bunch of different positions there. I was like support guy number 2. The day I started, it was like me and then 4 other guys in a cubicle in like an office building in Austin. But I feel like I remember that kind of coming down the pipe when I was working in support, yeah.
I think almost every support person there had seen that ticket at some point. And Terrell was on a lot of our tickets, and I remember after some of that stuff was resolved, I was like, hey, I know this has been crazy. Like, here's a good Starbucks gift card. I know you love caffeine, so I appreciate all the work you've done.
I totally remember that, yeah.
Cool. So what's the hardest... Oh, sorry, Jason.
I was just gonna say, I guess to just take a quick step back for those that might not know a lot about WP Engine, what do you folks provide that makes you stand out? You know, I mean, obviously you mentioned caching and things like that, but what other things make you stand out from other hosting companies?
That's a really good question. It's something that is getting increasingly harder to have a good answer for, especially as more and more people, more and more companies launch. Even the big entrenched players in the shared hosting space now are launching managed WordPress hosting. A lot of basically kind of what we do differently from them, however, a lot of what we can do for customers is based on kind of the special sauce that we have in our specific Nginx, Varnish, etc. Configurations, like that kind of eke out just a little bit more and a little bit more performance. You'll see with a lot of other managed hosts, they still fall back on caching plugins. They still fall back on things like that. There are some that don't. There are a lot of the bigger players out there, and a lot of respect to them, that they don't have to fall back on caching plugins, on things like that they can handle the stuff at the server level. Really, one of the biggest things that we provide, though, is service. Like I said, I was employee number 5. I was support employee number 2. In 3.5 years, it'll be 4 in October, the company's grown from 5 employees to 300. The majority of those employees are in support. And they are, we have a full-on training program that actually makes sure that our level 1 people, sometimes they might give a little bit of a tone-deaf answer, you know, like any support would, especially if like it's the new guy's first day and that's the answer he gives or anything else. But we pride ourselves on when we give a wrong answer, when someone comes back and says, no, that was a wrong answer, you know, like, help me fix this. We make sure that those people get the answers that they need, get the help that they need, short of going in and, you know, doing a code audit on a customer site. And in some cases, our support goes above and beyond and does something like that. Maybe not an audit, but we'll definitely take a look at particular bits of code. But really, the thing that sets us apart is our knowledgeable team that really kind of, you know, makes WP Engine WP Engine. It definitely it's always nice to get someone on the phone and say, hey, something's broken, and instead of them going, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and pass this up the chain to somebody who can help you out, actually being able to dive in and help you fix the thing. We feel like that's kind of a big differentiator. Of course, there's staging sites, there's Git integration. We're working with HHVM implementations now. We actually have a large, and it's for kind of larger, higher end, higher traffic customers. For our current HHVM implementation, it's kind of like our supercar, where we build like the really whiz-bang stuff, and then it trickles down into the rest of our hosting. We realized that we needed to keep continually improving our stack, but we also needed to kind of do a leapfrog, and the work we've been doing with HHVM is something that's exciting, and something that our labs team is working on making like top flight.
Yeah, that's the Mercury project. If people have been following your blog, they'd probably had a bit of a read up. You've actually got a Vagrant install too. If people want to try it out, you can go to GitHub and pull that down and get the kind of very similar environment set up locally. So when you're coding for something that's going to go onto your Mercury installation setup, then you can actually know that it's going to work. And I believe you guys developed that with 10up. Is that correct, Jason?
Yeah, that is. So we were looking to have a Vagrant environment to basically let all of our customers be able to test potentially their code against HHVM, but also test their code against PHP. A lot of people have been asking us for some sort of dev environment stack, something like that. So they're like, okay, well, we know you have specialized caching. We know you can't give away all your caching rules, but we'd still like to see how something performs against caching. So not only is it for our HHVM customers, the Vagrant, it also is for our PHP customers. But we worked with 10up, they are where, and at least initially, the VVV project kind of took off and grew and everything else. So we figured that they would probably be the best folks to partner with when it came to kind of building something a little more next generation. And so far it's been a great collaboration. We keep shipping new versions. We just shipped version 1.3, which allows you to actually provision multiple sites on the Vagrant with a YAML file. So you can just very simply set up, if a site is HHVM, PHP, whatever, and go down and through the YAML file actually provision that, and then when you provision the Vagrant.
When HHVM first came onto the scene, it seemed like it was super unstable, and that anyone that was actually using it had to have like an Nginx backup, so that as soon as HHVM crashed, it could go and jump over to serving from Nginx. How has that changed over time? Is HHVM a bit more stable now, where you don't have to worry about that as much?
Yeah, so HHVM is definitely more stable now. The Facebook team has been really great about getting that and working with the community to make sure that there is a more kind of stable environment for people to serve up their sites. Of course, Facebook runs most of its services, if I'm not mistaken, off of HHVM. They are very interested in making sure that the service and the server in general is stable. So the improvements that they've made. We also worked with them to have a PHP failback. So basically, if HHVM does manage to fail and doesn't generate expected code within a particular amount of time, it will fail back to PHP FPM. So that's kind of nice. So that way you don't have to worry about potentially losing a hit, a customer, what have you. So
as a part of the infrastructure, it sounds like like the HHVM clients are more of the high-end, high-traffic type sites that you service, as well as, like you're saying, the other, like the beginner tier, let's say, on a different tech. How do how is how do you handle that infrastructure differences in managing the support for that, you guys? Can you guys have different tiers or levels of support based on that?
So after a particular plan, once your plan hits a particular level, say you come in, you sign up for maybe not our entry level service, but $99 a month. That gets you 10 sites. You work with that for a little bit. One of your sites takes off. You start getting more and more traffic. Suddenly you become, say, a Huffington Post partner or whatever, and they start running your headlines. You start getting more and more and more traffic. Eventually, once you kind of get up to our higher tier professional enterprise, things like that plans, we do actually have account managers that we can assign to kind of our higher tier customers. And of course, those do come included with kind of our higher tier packages. It's something that that our sales team negotiates at the time, though. But we definitely have most of those customers, however, unless it's a high priority support request, a lot of those folks still file tickets to just our basic supports team. A lot of times they can get an answer a little bit quicker than somebody who has a red phone, and the bat line goes off, and all of a sudden you have to deploy the team. Like a lot of our customers understand that okay, well, we don't need to use this. It's probably just going to be the same guys helping us out anyway. Like once we call our account manager, he's going to just probably nudge all of the same people. So let's just file a support request, or let's just file a chat request, things like that. So, but there is definitely kind of higher tiers of support. But from overall, all of our support teams still helps out no matter what the level of support. So there's ninjas amongst all of our support team, but they hide in plain sight and still help regular customers too.
Gotcha. So as like I know in the past I've had clients where I've dealt with like Rackspace or some other host, and sometimes they like you're saying, they have account managers, and then you were saying too is that the WP Engine does tweaks based on some needs of the application at hand. Are those, I guess, a lot of frustrations that I've actually heard and as well as encountered in the past with certain hosts is sometimes when you get into support, you don't necessarily get the person that knows about those tweaks that were made to the application at hand. How do you guys handle that?
So when we make changes to the server, we actually have a backend tool that manages all of our customer account data. It was something that was built in-house and we use. However, the tool itself actually allows our techs, our account managers, things like that, to leave notes. So if there's been a change on the server, we do everything we can to what we call, and of course this isn't exclusive to us, but to not snowflake a server. Snowflakes melt. Snowflakes melt at like the worst possible times. So everything we can do to not make a snowflake, to not change the configuration on the server, we try to do that. But in the rare case where it needs to happen, and in a lot of cases this is on kind of the larger enterprise customers and sites and things like that. But in those cases, we do make sure that it's fully documented. That in some cases, we've even made entire wiki pages for the changes and what to do if the hardware fails and all of a sudden you need to roll out new changes, things like that. But we control a lot of what we do in the backend with a provisioning tool called Ansible. So a lot of those changes, a lot of the kind of tiers of service and things like that, if we need a new particular level of server, if it has an alternate configuration or something like that, it's as easy as, just running the particular Ansible job, this, and this, and then add like the couple tweaks in the off chance that it is a snowflake, and that's it.
In the event of like instant spikes of traffic, going up really high out of the normal range, do you have anything that like comes into play for that? I remember there was a labs project that was being talked about probably about a year ago or so about having basically a static file cache going on of like the full web page being cached and serving off of that in instances where everything blew up.
Yeah, so for some customers, a lot of our infrastructure, the way it is set up currently, we are running, when I started, we were just running these things called clusters. And clusters, the explanation is pretty straightforward. You have a batch of servers that would all share the traffic for a particular set of customers, depending on their tier, how much they had paid for. Eventually, we moved into another setup where we managed to kind of compact the cluster and some of the load sharing and things like that down into a single instance. We still have clusters. We still offer them for our higher tier customers as needed. We still offer that sort of setup, high availability, higher availability, things like that. And I totally lost track of what I was saying. What was the question again? I'm sorry, Tom.
So there was talk about a year ago about a labs project of basically putting a full cache on everything so that it would serve super fast. I think it was serving off of like AWS or something maybe.
Yeah, okay, that's right. So what we do with some of these customers, especially the ones that are on the single server, we have historically either primed a cache, like an S3 style cache, and use some DNS trickery to point at S3 and route, server trickery, everything else to route traffic to S3 rather than the main site. That was a labs project for a minute. It turned out that there wasn't enough interest in it. There was some, at least some enough hard interest in it to continue doing it as a project. However, it is something that we have on occasion deployed for customers as needed, like kind of in a super, when someone really, really needs it. When someone's like, oh man, I'm going to be on, not only like I'm going to be on Oprah tomorrow, I'm going to be on like every daily talk show, every major news publication, things like that. Yeah, we can definitely work something out, but it's not something that we've decided to bubble up at this time. It might come out at some point in the future. We might start work back up on it again, but currently, yeah, we're not really doing anything with that anymore.
Cool. And another labs project you guys have been working on is the Geoip plugin. Now, I believe this one is for people who want to use geo-targeting and geolocation to serve different content for their visitors. Now, one of the things, obviously, you guys do very well is caching and hard caching. I believe this plugin is designed to work with your caching on WP Engine. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Geoip plugin?
Yeah, so Geoip is really cool. As you said, it really allows someone who, say that they have a say they serve the Eurozone. And of course the Eurozone is made up of a number of different countries, different areas, not all necessarily a common language. Say someone wants to sell handbags and they want to sell them to someone, or they want to, their main areas are say like Greece, Paris, Spain, and England. So using, we've actually made it really simple with Geoip. You can go a little more complex, but even using something as simple as shortcodes, you can target what content is served to a customer in a particular geographic region. We use some information that we have about particular IPs, where they are in the world, things like that, geo-targeting. But it definitely allows people to say they want to offer, like I said, either products, special products to a particular area, or in a specific language even. Basically, easier ways to target geographic areas.
Would it be possible, theoretically, with this plugin to have like an IP paywall, so targeting specific customers or companies that have maybe bought a membership or subscription for their employees?
So, using our current caching, paywalls are kind of tricky, just because of the way that they're set up. What Geoip is really best at is still serving up cacheable, not necessarily dynamic content, based, that someone would be more apt to want from a paywall site. So, like, of course, a login session, something like that, would require like non-cache hits, things like that, at least that I can think of, unless you know of something I don't.
I don't know. I'm a little bit early in the stage of what I'm thinking about implementing, but basically it's like either you have a subscription for your people or you don't. So then it's like you either block the content or you don't.
Okay. Yeah. I could see. I could maybe see something being done with that, but it would definitely be something that you would have to kind of play with first to kind of. But I did not work on the Geoip team to help implement that. I'm sure that my guys are watching back at the office right now, like, no, say this. I'm like scanning over to Slack right now to see if the team is saying anything, and they're not. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to get a hard time when I come into the office tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I'll definitely be playing around with it, though. I'm glad you mentioned it. That's interesting.
On a kind of related note here, Jason, I'm not sure if you might know the details based on what you just said, but with the Geoip plugin, does it have any concept of kind of fragment caching? So say if I want to serve a partial bit of content to certain visitors in certain countries, but then, like, say there's other chunks in the page that are persistent across all countries, can I do that with Geoip?
I believe so.
Cool. Very
yeah. Okay, Slack isn't going off. Slack isn't telling me that I'm being a dummy, so we'll use that as confirmation, but I reserve the right to be horribly, horribly wrong.
Nice. Cool. Now, you've mentioned Git integration with WP Engine. How do developers go about using that? What's the normal process there, and do you have any resources that we can send to people if they want to know a little bit more about it?
Yeah, the easiest way to kind of check out our Git integration is to just go directly to git.wpengine.com. Nice and straightforward. But our Git integration is pretty simple. We don't really offer much in the way of, I mean, of course we offer Git, that's great, everything else, but a lot of things that people equate with Git are submodules, post-commit hooks, things like that. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we don't support that. We only really allow folks to push changes up to their site, and just using, your simple basic git push command. And I actually I knew this question was coming. I made some notes. So as far as kind of what happens after Git is run, Git basically takes your code, checks it in, then it runs it through a simple PHP linter. So it just kind of makes sure that your code changes aren't going to break your site.
That's cool.
Occasionally it does catch a random error, and that's frustrating, but our support can kind of help you work through that, or suppress an error, things like that. But mainly, that's all we really do. Now, we don't really have any plans to kind of add to that currently. We actually really think that that you should have like your own workflow for say things like running grunt tasks, things like that. Like those should be run before you send stuff up to the server. And yeah, that's basically kind of the gist of it.
Cool. Anything thinking along the lines of things that happen after the event, have you thought about having a hook or something where we could like run a deploy to WP Engine, then have it post back to Slack and go, hey, successful deploy? That's the only kind of thing that I'm thinking would be cool to add.
Our labs team, and I'm a member of the labs team, we've been playing with and loving Slack. I've used Slack in the make.wordpress Slack.
Yep.
I think I'm a member of like 7 different groups right now. That is definitely something that I know if I have that many groups and I'm just kind of like a part-time user of Slack, I have to imagine that other people are clamoring for something like that too. So I'll definitely bring that up.
Cool. Awesome.
Just from experience, it seems like when I push something to staging versus pushing into production, it takes a lot longer to push up to staging. And I know that when going to production, yeah, it's running those things to check that I haven't gone and pushed up a big fatal PHP error. But is there something different going on between the two, which would cause one to go super fast, being production, while staging would be slower?
No, that's actually really weird. There's a handful of things that are different with our staging and lab environments. Mainly, it just has to do with our staging environment doesn't have any caching on it, and there's some other configuration changes just on the server side that allow you to kind of work on your site in staging and not have to worry about clearing caches every 5 seconds. So I don't know why it would push so slowly. That is definitely something that either if you file a ticket on that or if you hit me up after the program, I can set you up with support and they can help you troubleshoot that. I know a couple guys who are really great at Git internally that we can help you work through that though.
Cool. Yeah, it doesn't really worry me much. I'm fine with it. I was just curious if there were different processes going on.
Yeah, totally.
So
Thanks.
WP Engine obviously is a premium host. Aside from the cost, what sort of website / companies wouldn't be a fit for WP Engine?
What companies wouldn't be a fit? Really, of course, I should say, oh, well, everyone will be a fit at WP Engine. We welcome all people. However, and although we have a entry-level personal plan, $29 a month, single site, we really find that gets used by people who have kind of outgrown their shared hosting, who are frustrated even enough to not want to go to the managed version of whatever their shared hosting has to offer. But a lot of people who are just kind of starting out, your uncle who you kind of told, hey, you should have a website, you should, oh yeah, you should use WordPress too. I use WordPress, it's great, I can help you out occasionally. Although don't offer that to any of your relatives because it's just a horrible, horrible time sink. I hope none of my relatives are watching, but they probably aren't. Anyhow, kind of the entry-level people are really the the best, or like not. That's probably the best answer to that question is like entry level, just getting started out. You're not sure if you want to keep building a site. You're not sure if you're going to keep updating your blog after like 5 posts. Things like that. That sort of stuff is what shared hosting was built for. And there are tons of shared hosts out there who would be more than happy to keep milking that customer for $5 to $10 a month. But it's almost not ethical for a managed host to keep milking someone like that for $29 or however much more a month.
What about those folks that I guess have a dev team or have an engineering team that they kind of want to be able to control their caching, they want to be able to control the servers and things like that. Does WP Engine even offer those types of services, or not really?
Yeah, not really. We do, honestly, in a lot of cases, sometimes the folks that have the web team that wants to control caching, that wants to have their fingers in the servers, on the command line on the server, things like that. We don't offer SSH access. If that's something that's important to you, then we might not be for you. Although we might be, because we also feel like our customers can get a lot of stuff that they need to get done using Git, using SFTP, using things like that. There doesn't need to be a trade-off. But definitely kind of the hardcore server admins, the people who just would rather run things in-house on their own system, we're never going to be for those people. Eventually, if they get fed up with trying to manage those servers, we're a great fit then. But until that point, it's kind of hard to appeal to the neckbeards that really just kind of want to admin a Linux server all day. Hey, no offense to any of them, because I mean, if you see me, I'm kind of a neckbeard myself, so I've spent my fair share of time on Linux servers, so but yeah, we might not be for them either.
So in doing support somewhat frequently, I started in support at WooThemes, and there are sites that just smacked me in the face with some shocking content. Have you ever had any experiences where you're just like, whoa, I can't believe I'm working on this kind of website?
I've definitely had some shocking content ones, especially in my time at DreamHost, who is very, 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 very into the U.S. First Amendment, freedom of speech. Just anything you want to host, you can host it. You can host it there, and that's all well and good. But sometimes that ended up becoming fairly interesting. I saw an eye full of more than a few of those sites. Definitely. I'm sure with Woo and e-commerce, you have a lot of interesting content in there as well.
Maybe.
Perhaps.
So a few times during the show, you've mentioned the lab section of WP Engine, and it's really cool. That's where you guys test some new things and see whether they're going to work. Is there anything that's happening in labs that you can discuss now to give us kind of an exclusive, oh, this is in the works, possibly coming out soon? Have you got anything you can talk about, or is it all under NDA?
So I can talk about one thing that we kind of haven't touched on, which is our search project.
Cool.
I've actually been working on, or personally been working on implementing that. Basically, it is Elasticsearch based. We are allowing customers, it's currently in beta right now, for customers to come in to sign up for the account. It gets enabled. Basically, we built it almost to be a drop-in replacement for WordPress search, which means that if if you know what you're doing, you guys all know what you're doing. You're developers. You can maybe weight the results a little bit more. We've actually had a solid foundation. Our friends at TinUp have a really great plugin, Elasticpress. We use that we forked that, made some changes. Some of those might actually end up back upstream to the folks at TinUp. We're discussing that right now. But basically, yeah, we're trying to offer kind of just a very basic like drop-in search replacement based on Elasticpress, and really, so far I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on it. It's been it's been kind of overwhelmingly positive. All the customers that we've shown it to, because I think it was WordCamp San Francisco. Right after this last one that they had a community summit, and I was there representing WP Engine, kind of representing hosts. There were other hosts there as well. And when you have a couple core developers, a couple very senior core developers saying WordPress search sucks, there's not really anything we can do about it though, because the biggest problem is search using MySQL sucks. And that kind of touches back on what we were talking about earlier with related posts. Yep. Things like that, MySQL isn't necessarily built for. Our search implementation, we're going to leverage Elasticsearch, leverage something that was actually built for search to provide both search and related posts. And hopefully, if all goes well, if we if we deem it a project that we're going to keep working on and keep kind of pushing forward, we'd like to roll it out to as many customers as we can. A lot of our Geoip or things like that, especially Mercury, tends to kind of go towards like the higher tiers of our customers. So this is something that we kind of want to put out there for everyone, or as many people as we can make it cost effective for.
Aside from just taking over the search aspects, does your implementation allow to just hijack WP Query and allow all queries to go through Elasticsearch?
There are. So have you played with the Elasticpress plugin at all, or?
Well, Ali has our own called SearchPress. So I think that's what ours is called. Maybe I have it wrong. But anyway, we have our own implementation of an Elasticsearch wrapper that we tend to use. But I mean, if it becomes a service that's available on WP Engine, it would be great to go and have the Elasticsearch functionality there without having to go and point IP addresses off of Amazon and that kind of deal. So it's just
of course.
Yeah.
Of course, that is definitely something that we're exploring. That might be kind of something that we've discussed is if enough people ask for weights, search weights. I'm not gonna like declare on the show that we're promising search weights, but if enough people ask for it, it's definitely something that we would spin out into its own like kind of extended functionality plugin, like an extension. So something like what you're suggesting, Tom, like that would definitely be something that we could definitely explore. Extending into like an additional like functionality plugin for the folks who would need to use something like that.
Cool.
For enterprise level type clients, I know that I've actually had a client of mine have an elk stack. Do you have anything like that for a developer where they can seek live queries, do searches on certain items within various log files, whether it's MySQL or the web server or anything like that? Do you guys have that?
So we offer a pretty basic like access to your Apache log, your Nginx log, your error logs. We allow you to kind of look through those. I believe it's maybe I want to say last 100, but last 100 seems way too low. Maybe last 1,000. However, that is definitely something that we've been thinking on, and especially as the tools that we've kind of bubbled up in our HVV, our HHVM Vagrant, having those available to more and more people, especially in a live production environment, would definitely be useful. So that's something that we've discussed. We haven't really roadmapped or explored much outside of that, but it's something that I could definitely see being a thing in the future.
Cool. So what's the hardest problem you've ever had to solve on WP Engine and a client's site?
I'm sorry, you cut out there.
What's the hardest problem you've had to solve on one of your clients' sites that have been using WP Engine?
So it wasn't even a WordPress problem. Oddly enough, it was when I had first started at WP Engine. This is probably, I'd been there like less than 3 months, and we'd gotten a brand new client, and this client was a party photographer, and he took somewhere on the scale of, I think when he signed up with us, he had 62 gigabytes of media, images, things like that. And he was moving from a host that had no SSH access. So that meant I couldn't rsync anything. I couldn't even SCP anything, whatever. So basically, I had to set
floppy disks.
He offered, and unfortunately we couldn't do it. He offered to send us like multiple DVDs and just load it into the server for him. But I set up an overnight bash job that effectively SFTP'd, downloaded everything, waited, and managed to very slowly take a listing of everything that I could get listed, FTP everything down to an intermediary server, and then rsync it up to the proper server, and then compare the file list to make sure that I didn't miss anything. That was the longest 19-hour day I have ever gone through.
19 hours is pretty good for that amount of data.
Yeah.
And to think you didn't even learn anything in those 19 hours. You just moved files around.
I often joke that no matter how far you get away from, you can, no matter what your job title is, eventually on a long enough timeline, you will have to be reduced to doing some data entry, really, really quick, filling out some info in a spreadsheet, filling out, just general, very, quick, doing some scripty work to try to make sure that everything gets moved over, things like that, where it's nothing sexy or exciting, but it definitely saved that guy from having to send us a DVD, effectively.
Or multiple DVDs.
Yes, exactly.
We had a stack of 20 DVDs. That'd be crazy.
And then having to rsync all of those to the server, yeah, it would.
Definitely a crazy story, but back to a little bit more of normalcy, I guess. What's your typical daily routine look like?
Okay, I'm going to correct you right there. There is nothing normal about my daily routine. Today, normally, because I'm in California, they're very nice, and they don't make me come in at the same time that everyone else in Austin comes in at, as they're 2 hours ahead. So today, I normally come in at 9 a.m., I had a 7 a.m. call with developers who, I believe it was 7 or 8 at night for them. So it was one of those things where sometimes you just have to sync up with community members no matter what time zone they're in. and that means having to roll out of bed, drive to Starbucks, get some coffee, and then head back to the office and immediately dive on the call. Sometimes, like, I've even dived on one of those calls, like, while I've been in the Starbucks line, like, hop in a Google Hangout and just mute it, order, unmute, mute it again. Yeah. So then also we're getting ready, of course, for 4.3, which should be out just in the next few weeks here. We're making sure that, of course, we don't think that there's going to be any blow-ups, anything like that. The WordPress core team always does a great job with that, but just making sure that we have communications ready so our customers know that it's coming. We have a little bit of a buffer that we offer most of our customers. You can upgrade right away if you want to, but in this case, we actually said, we'll go ahead and upgrade for you. If you don't want to worry about any of that, so we had to get all of the stuff ready for that. Make sure that I checked it technically, things like that. Also, on an average day, I touch almost every department of the company. So sometimes I'll go on a sales call. Sometimes, especially if they need someone, we actually have technical salespeople who are able to help out. But sometimes, and this, I feel like lame, but sometimes they need to bring in the big guns, so they call me and say, okay, well, we need you in on this call, and then I say like 3 things, and they're like, hey man, thanks, that was a really big help, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. I was doing other work anyway, but yeah, I've been implementing the search product. That's something that's still a few months away, as we're kind of I've been dialing in the Elasticsearch server. I sent 27 emails today. It was active in 4 of my 7 active Slack rooms. We also, the non-labs team, the rest of the company runs HipChat. I was hanging out in HipChat today. I'm talking to you gentlemen this evening, and or this morning, I believe, in Bronson's case, right?
Yep. Correct.
Yeah. So this outside of the podcast is a fairly average day for me, and it's sometimes I get to even work a little bit on code occasionally.
Cool. Well, from the sounds of that, you've had a very long day, and we'll let you have the rest of the evening off, I think. So thanks very much for being on the show. We really appreciate it. If people want to reach out and get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
So on Twitter, I am at Boogah, Boogah, and that is probably the best way to get in touch. I'm also Cosper, C-O-S-P-E-R, my last name, at wpengine.com. If anyone has any questions, you can reach out to me in either of those places.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And what about you, Tom? Where's the best place for people to find you and interact with you?
Twitter at Tom Harrigan. Pretty much any service at Tom Harrigan, except my website is Thomas Harrigan.
Cool. And what about you, Jason number 2?
At Rez on Twitter, or Rez.com is probably the best way to get hold of me.
Excellent. Cool. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm at Bronson Quick on Twitter. And thanks very much for everyone tuning in, and thanks again to Jason for being on the show. If you want to subscribe to WP DevTable, you can do that by going to wpdevtable.com/subscribe. We've got RSS feeds, we've got iTunes there. You can subscribe to us on Google+. You can follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our mailing list, whatever you prefer, we've got you covered. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all again next week.
Very much.